I'd like to solicit some comments from the public. Anyone who's in person or, well, I think we have Zoom going. Maybe not. So anyone who more than happy to take and solicit comments from the audience. We also have copies of the budget up front if you would like one. Okay. If we don't have any comments from the public, we will be doing this every Tuesday for the month of April. So for now, I'll adjourn the public meeting notice until next Tuesday at about 7 o'clock or shortly thereafter. All right. Let's move on to agenda item 9. Mr. Giaccio, the administrative report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every quarter, pretty much, I get the board up to date on the projects that are going on in town. Usually takes a few months for us to make a little progress. The first project is the North Washington Culvert Project. You may recall that both the sidewalk and the street here were collapsing. That was due to a culvert that had basically collapsed, causing damage to the sidewalk. Project is just about finished. You can see it here. This was the area where the board wanted bollards. Where those cones are, where the bollards are going to go. We made accommodations for that when the sidewalk was redone.
And
So,
are the bollards ordered?
yeah, the bollards
Yes.
are ordered. Those
Oh,
are
great.
like the base for the bollards.
Terrific.
The bollards will go like a sleeve. They'll go right over that.
Excellent.
A little more than $400,000 project. Palladino Construction did it. That was a necessary project. The road was collapsing, so we had to get it done.
Are they staging in the east parcel?
No,
They've had dump trucks running in and out. Palladino.
maybe just for material or something,
Okay.
possibly felt sidewalk area or something like that.
Okay,
But they're pretty much done, so you won't see them anymore.
cool.
Are they going to repair the police lot Robinson Park? Or are they gonna
Yes,
repair that?
they're gonna restore Robinson Park to its original, yes. And we will install a garbage can. Once
Thank
that's
you.
done.
And maybe
yeah.
take the Christmas tree lights down,
Well, yeah.
or at least
We may later.
unplug them.
Riverwalk extension, this was we had a grant to do this portion of the Riverwalk along Riverside Drive. There was talk about extending it over to Fremont Pond, wraps around, and also to the south to the train station. We received a grant in $40,000. We have to do a match of $40,000. So we went out did an RFP. Creighton Manning was awarded the contract. They'll start on the design shortly. We haven't had a pre-construction meeting yet. Another culvert that collapsed, residents will probably know, and anybody who drives south on Route 9, road was collapsing. There was a metal plate on Route 9 for many years. DOT actually put us on notice that had to be repaired. Village is responsible for everything underneath the road. DOT is responsible for the road itself. This project is going to be completed, should be completed by April 15th. Reason why it's taking a little longer, they needed to accommodate access to the business up here, their driveway. So they had to do the pour for the sidewalks in 2 sessions. So that was part of the hold up. $450,000 project. Jabco is the construction company. This board just last week approved the Fremont Pond Restoration Project. We had a problem at Fremont Pond with the water quality. In fact, one year we had a situation where the fish were dying. Part of the problem is the contaminants that come off Route 9 and end up into Fremont Pond. Another problem is fertilizer that residents use. So the project is not only to design a natural system to deal with the stormwater runoff to prevent contaminants from entering the water, but also to educate the residents as to what damage they're doing to the pond.
And Anthony, that project, that grant and what Langen's going to work on is just the design.
It's
of the
design and
solution.
construction.
And construction, okay. I wasn't sure about that.
And it's,
100% for that?
it's the grant is going to pay for 100%.
Okay.
It's a DEC grant. All right, this is the dreaded Ichabod's Landing bulkhead project. We've been trying hard to get this done. I know residents in that area are very frustrated. We're gonna do a riprap similar to this area. This is just south of the bulkhead. We estimated, the original bid that we did back in the fall was 2.1 million. We awarded the bid. The contractor failed to get the job done. We had to part ways and rebid the project. It's out to bid. I believe it's April 19th. I'm not positive on the date they have to get the bids back. We've already contacted a few different contractors. We had pre-bid meetings, 2 of them with our engineer, and several contractors showed up, so we do expect to get a decent bid result. However, that 2.1 million is probably gonna be a lot higher, because it looks like they will have to access the property from the water side, which means getting a barge and bringing the equipment in that way.
Anthony, once the bid is accepted, when can we expect construction to start on it?
I'd say within 2 months.
So it will happen over the summer.
During construction, that part of the Riverwalk will probably be closed. We're gonna have to detour people around the front of Ichabod's. Well, probably, we've already borrowed, I know we were talking about borrowing, we've already borrowed for this project, but if it costs more, we're gonna have to borrow additional funds in the fall, when we do our capital budget.
So we already borrowed 2.1?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said it could be up to an estimated,
I just told Sarah it could be as high as $1 million. Well, we don't know. We don't know what the bids are gonna come in, so.
Yeah.
There are more bidders. We only had 2 bidders last time, so we're hoping to get more bids. Two of the companies that we're hoping to bid on it are in the neighborhood. One's working on the lighthouse project and one's doing the shoreline at Kingsland.
The
So
Lighthouse
maybe-
project has a barge out there already.
They have a barge and EOQ is doing the one at Kingsland, and they showed interest in bidding on ours.
good.
Great.
This project, aside from the trails, you may not notice a lot here. This is the Pecanico River DeVries Park, pretty much restoring the natural environment in this area. It's to stabilize the shoreline, which it has been eroding for many years, landscaping, dealing with invasive species, and also putting redoing this trail you see here. This is just to the northeast corner of DeVries Park, which is on the northeast side of the Pecanico River. So they did some trail work here. They'll also, it's not really a kayak launch, it'll be a little trail that goes down to the Pecanico that you can bring your kayak. Peter Landy, we have 2 grants that are gonna fund this project.
I've walked in there, it's, they have done a great job so far.
When is that estimated to be completed?
Completed this by Memorial Day.
And is that only for the north side of the river? Is there anything?
It's the north, it wraps around from the bridge north, and then also on the ball field side, but not all the way south, like maybe half of the ball field side. You know where the trees were planted
Yeah,
about to that point?
that's that, okay. But not, there's that old path there, like Horseman Trail.
Horseman Trail.
On
It
the other
doesn't-
side, does not
Doesn't
include
go in
that.
there, okay,
We do have plans for that, though,
okay,
as the next phase of this project.
okay.
This is Cortland Plaza. We did retain an engineer to do some of the stormwater work and the radius for vehicles turning at this location. We have an $80,000 grant. We have to match it with $20,000. We have a meeting with the engineer this week to start talking about the project. The first step was to do a survey, and that's what they're working on now. That's the Cortland Plaza. Another difficult project is the Statue Island Improvement Project, which has been going on for 5 years. We put together a committee, a design committee. Denise was on the design committee. We retained a landscape architect, many times we went to the DOT, showed them the project, they came back with comments back and forth for quite some time. We finally had a design in place, ready to go out to bid, and we sent one last final design to the DOT, and they said, what are you doing? We're gonna redo this intersection here at Pearson. We're like, what do you mean? Literally 5 times to the DOT, and they never said it. So it kind of, we have to redesign it in a way that we can, if they don't redesign the Pearson crosswalk, we could still do the project. But if they do, we can also accommodate the future of the island. So that is again, back at the DOT for permitting. It is the extent of this project is the exact curb line of the existing statue. It's not a lot, it's not a dramatic change. The only change you'll see is there'll be a landing on the opposite side of Old Broadway that goes to the Citgo station. It's required by the DOT. And that is majority of paid for through a grant as well.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so part of that whole thing is cleaning up that whole,
Yeah, it's gonna be all beautified. It'll be nicely done. I mean, we have a significant amount of funds to do it. It's gonna be all landscaped and with some pavers and nice. It's a nice design. I could send the design. The board has seen the design, but I'll send it again.
sure.
Are we putting lighting into that? Because sometimes it's like you drive an eye and it seems like nothing's there, so. it's not
Lighting
sure.
of the statue, yes. I'm not quite sure if there'll be additional lighting around the walkway. I'm not sure, I'll tell you the truth.
Okay.
You brought up, you mentioned the redesign of the Pearson intersection.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate, or is that just the crosswalk improvements they recently did?
No, what we had suggested over the years was to merge the two crossing traffic signals, the one that's right at the edge of the Statue Island and the one that's at Pearson, so that you don't have two right in a row. They would reconfigure Gordon to Riddell Street or whatever. Gordon
To go.
to link up with Pearson.
Okay.
So it'll be basically a 4-way stop right there.
Almost
Oh,
to,
so
almost
the
to
offset.
extend the island
Yeah,
further
so-
north.
So we have to accommodate that design to extend the island if that actually ever happens.
If they decide that's what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
And I hear if they decide and if that ever happens, so is that
So it's a
yours?
bird in a hand, two in the bush, so we're
Yeah.
just gonna do the island,
Yeah,
assuming,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
But we're going to design it in a way that we could extend the
Easily,
island if we
okay.
need to. That's already been done, actually, and went to the DOT. The mayor asked me to get an update on the 4 initiatives that the village board has been working on. I think you saw trustee Rodriguez's email. He's been working on the crosswalks mostly and working with Kevin. We'll be painting a lot of those crosswalks this summer. That seems to be a good first start for some of the crosswalks to see how they perform, like the one on the Peister seems to have worked out well. So we're working with the trustee on that. You saw the bollards on North Washington. I know there was talk about some other bollards, but those are the first ones that we're putting in.
Yeah, the other ones where we're talking about were in the cross on Route 9 to,
Right, yes. Yes, across the
Yeah.
street to New Broadway.
yeah, to New Broadway, because a lot of people go to Open Door,
Yep.
and it's a hard time for them to cross straight in there, so.
We're,
But it's just prevent for like, how many times the trucks come over and so.
so trustee Rodriguez sent me a picture of I think it's a planter or something that's designed for that, but I kind of like the bollard idea.
Yeah, the ballers that we were looking into that, there was just like, almost like a 45-degree
Yes,
angle
that's
on
what
the
he
bottom,
said.
but they were hard to find and hard to get
And
it
very
because
expensive.
a company was making on England, they had to import from there. So we decided to go for different ballers.
We had done plastic bollards, which get knocked over from time to
Yeah,
time,
it's
but
not-
maybe,
It's like nothing.
maybe if these bollards work, it's another option. Sarah has purchased, as ordered, planters. These are the planters she ordered, that'll be placed around the village. How many
Yeah.
did you order?
15.
15
Yeah,
for
good.
starters.
Yeah, those are nice.
The board approved up to $20,000 for planters. So those are been ordered. The solar energy project. So what has held that one up, that's at Elm Street parking lot. We anticipate doing solar panels. We had a lease agreement. The board had already authorized signing the lease agreement with the attorney's blessing. The issue that came up after the lease was done was that it's a brownfield site. It's a aerosol contaminated site. So there is some components to their construction that have to be addressed during when they install the footings. They're gonna have to remove the soil. If the soil is contaminated, they'll have to send it for, to be taken to a special contaminated, site. And that kind of held up some of the discussion. We had to make sure it was okay with Gillette, who was responsible for the site, and AECOM, who's the engineer working on the cleanup. So it's a little complicated. We just signed the authorization for them to be the exclusive, EcoG to be the exclusive solar installer for Con Ed, so Con Ed could give them the information they need to move forward. So I think it's gonna move forward. We're close to getting that done. The solar panels are also proposed for the new DPW garage, but we have no agreement yet with EcoG on that. Just to remind you, we finished up the Beekman Avenue sidewalk project. The traffic signal was recently completed, but we still have to come back to pave the intersection at Washington, but also to restripe the parking spaces that were altered based on the sidewalk work. So that they're gonna come back in May to finish that up. Almost $1 million project with about 90% being paid for through grants. And the Clinton Street sidewalk was also what I thought was a very successful project, helping that area out. $250,000 in the CDBG. I think I put CBDG, which is wrong. That was my music. Other projects, the viaduct was completed in the fall. DPW garage design is basically done. The board will have to decide whether or not they're going to finance that project. There's the lighthouse. The barge is out there doing a cofferdam around the lighthouse so they can do the base of it. That's the county is doing that work. That should be done by the end of the summer. County is also working on the Kingston Point bulkhead, destroying the park temporarily, we hope, and preventing us from running programs pretty much for the entire spring and summer. Our cultural festival is probably in jeopardy, but we'll
We
have
probably do in Beekman.
talk about having it on Beekman Avenue.
Yeah.
We received a grant to do a climate action plan. That's to address greenhouse gas emissions through both buildings and also vehicles that the village owns. That's in the works. Route 9 sidewalks, we received a grant from Senator Harcum to do the west side, right across the street from the Statue Island, between the entrance to historic Hudson Valley and Pearson. I'm going to bring that to a work session soon with to hire an engineer to design it. We also have a grant for, I think, $200,000 to do downtown sidewalks. We're going to do just the most important trouble areas, not entire length of sidewalk, because it's not a huge amount of money to do a whole sidewalk, but most critical areas, we're going to try and use that money for that. And the $4.5 million New York Forward grant, we expect that project to start within a month or two.
And for that, I would like to invite the trustees to walk around the streets and so we can figure out, pinpoint where the street is needed the most, so we can just target that.
Okay. Yep. New York Forward is driven by the state. They tell us when the timing is, but we do expect it'll be a month or two where we can start that process.
And I think the big part with that's going to be, we have a bit of a head start to set up our own briefs for what we care about, before, everyone else can come in and start doing that. So if you have ideas, we should start thinking about where those are. Renee's a great idea. We walk through town and figure out where we want to talk or think we should focus. So I believe the target area is the triangle.
It's a triangle, Valley, Portland, and Beekman.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's my report.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, I just had a question about the DPW. You said, made a comment, decide if we're going to finance the DPW. Can you just elaborate a little bit more?
Well, we don't know exactly what it's gonna cost. Currently, it's in the $20 to $25 million range.
Okay,
So when it goes out to bid and we get the bids back, the board will make a decision. I mean, the goal is to get it financed, but it may be very expensive, so it's just something the board needs to think about.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's another project, the water tank, the secondary one, I believe that the repair of that was still
The
ongoing.
water tank is, the oldest tank is empty right now. We're working with the health department to get approval for the project, to repair it and refill it with, obviously with water, but there is also a line that connects from the reservoir to our main water system that needs to be repaired before we could fill that tank too. That tank's been out of service for a couple of years now. But we do have a plan, and it's the health department that's holding us up. And that one's also, we financed that one too. That one was already done at capital a couple of years ago.
Do we have a next step for that one? Because I know that's pretty big for our 24-hour requirements and growth down at Edge. We have a next step or timeline. I don't need it now. I'm just, it'd be
Let me reach out
good
to
one,
the
but
engineer. Yeah, it's been
see where we're going. Any questions for Mr. Jackson?
No.
Thank you, that was very informative. I believe our next agenda item is the WS2, which is the retaining attorney for the Verizon franchise agreement. I read through it this morning, and Anthony, do you have any additional insight into this one? It seems like
Yeah.
we're entering a consortium.
Yeah, so we, when Cablevision started doing cable television back, I guess in the 70s, early 80s, there was this franchise agreement that I guess the Public Service Commission imposed to give them the right to run cable through municipalities. So the two things we benefit from is they give us PEG grant money. That's what paid for all this equipment here. I think we still have some money from that. And they also give us an annual, about $120,000 a year, I guess it used to be, about $120,000 a year in annual subscription fees, I think they're called. The original contract was with Cablevision. It was about a 10-year franchise agreement. Later, Verizon came on board and they had their own cable system, and they needed a franchise agreement. So the sequence of their franchise agreement is off from Cablevision, but I think it's either a 10 or 15-year agreement. Same thing, the terms of that agreement is how much money we get in subscription fees and how much PEG money we get. Our contract came due. I think it's been a couple of years now that we have no contract, but also many of the municipalities in our area also, their contract has expired. So we meet with the village officials committee, and they're all, we talked about that, and we joined forces. We have 8 municipalities that are interested in hiring an attorney to negotiate the terms of the contract, which would apply to all 8 villages. So we get a huge savings by not having to hire our own attorney for it. I talked to the attorney, but happens to be our own attorney, MacArthur Finger. They do a couple other municipalities too. $400 an hour. They said no, definitely no more than 20 hours, and that will be divided by the 8 municipalities. So it's not a huge expense for the village. But we do have to agree to participate.
Seems like a easy one to throw on before try to negotiate more money and then put it on for next week.
Agreed. Do we know, and so they're looking into another 10-year or 15-year?
Yeah.
Okay, so this could put it to bed for that
Yeah,
long?
yeah.
Okay.
I think this is my second one since I've been here. I've been here 14 years, so it's,
Got it.
Next meeting then? Should we can we draft a resolution for it? Everyone's agreed?
Yes.
Yep.
Anthony had a roll with the music festival today. Your favorite place to talk about it?
I don't know why I came up with this idea. I have no idea. All right.
I wonder why.
So, Rivertown's music group has been doing some local upper shows around the area in Peekskill, and they're doing one in Briarcliff. They did one recently at Captain Lawrence. And they also helped us apply for the grant for the music festival that we're planning for 2024. We talked about the idea of doing some teaser shows in and around Sleepy Hollow that would promote the music festival for next year. In the villages to our south, there's something called the I think it's called the Rivertown's Music Tour. It's a nonprofit. They used to do it with just artwork, now they do it with music. There's all different locations for musicians. It's on June 3rd. We thought of the idea of doing our own one the same day to add to their performances. An all-day event at Horan's Landing. It would be smaller acts. It's 12 to 5. We thought the price was reasonable to have them run the whole show. They would get all the performers, they do all the sound, they get all the sound system. It's actually, I know personally that $2,500 isn't a huge expense for that. And we have it in the budget for the, from the Recreation Department, this year's budget, not next year's. So I'm recommending that we retain them to run this event for us. And we could also see how they perform consider them for the music festival as well. And that's what this is about.
Anthony, sounds like a great event. So this, they would find the performers as well? Okay.
And we'd work with them. I know there's plenty of local talent out there that we would look to do.
Is that included in this fee, or would that be additional?
No, that's included in the fee.
So the performers, the sound, everything is,
Everything, yeah,
what, $2,500 with a proposed date of June 3rd?
yeah.
Would the recreation department be working with like them, the police department obviously, but with like food trucks?
Yeah, I've already talked to Matt, and he's gonna help us with some input, other entertainment and food trucks.
Bathrooms and parking?
What?
Are there gonna be bathrooms for, and/or?
We do have porta cents, yeah.
Okay,
Parking is a different issue.
yeah, okay.
And let's make sure that the food trucks compromise for both days, not just one, like the other time. Just can make money one day and then they don't want to come back the next day.
Yeah. So that's the music festival.
Sounds good.
Seems
Yeah.
very reasonable to me.
Yeah.
About it.
What do we think is the date, June 3rd? I looked at my calendar to see anything conflicting.
You can-
I'm in.
There you go. Let me see, wait.
I might be having a baby.
Lauren might be
Or
out.
like,
And I
yeah.
have to hold it in. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
You can always buy those, those earphones that go over.
Right, yeah.
Throw earplugs into that and that's it.
So one-day event, it seems like $2,500. It seems like a very reasonable number.
Yeah.
Any concerns about throwing on for
Yeah.
next meeting?
Yes.
Sandra, I believe this one is for you.
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow Connected.
Appreciate that. And this was the one that I had just requested that we table it. And in that time, I had an opportunity to speak with Tom Schumacher directly to get more of an understanding of the timeline and just, what went through the mechanics of it. So With that, it did follow exactly as we had anticipated. So if everybody remembers, there was a phase one, where it was more the recon work, collecting all the information, getting with all the departments, and then the second part was the design phasing. And I just really wanted to understand how it was going to operate, whether it be a standalone, how we were going to possibly incorporate it with the website. And I just want to take a pause to explain that a little bit. This project was supposed to be maybe 8-10 weeks in, and we should have had this a long time ago. So now it became more like 10 months. So I wanted to be sure that we then weren't bumping into maybe a consideration to then integrate it with the website, reskin. You know, so it was like taking before putting the additional $3,500 into it. But in looking at the design and some of the functionalities, it will look very similar in suit to, for example, like the LDC, how they have their website. So it will be a site within our mainframe, and so whatever we choose to do, we can. And at this point, because all the work that has been put in thus far, and knowing that we're kind of, this should really accelerate, and I'll ask Anthony to comment further based on some of the additional meetings, but I'm comfortable with having them incorporated because as I even see that the color design and the schematic is going to fit nicely with our website. So it would be my recommendation to get it done because it's so important right now with all these different projects that we move forward, and I don't know where we are still with the website reskin and design, so I don't think there's nothing that's going to be a conflict, it's just going to be an enhancement. So thank you for giving me the consideration to review it further. Anthony, did you have anything?
I know that was the concern, that it's
Yeah.
compatible with the village website, that they,
Yeah,
they work well together.
yeah,
We did meet with Bill to talk about the next phase of the proposal to redo our whole website. I think that's a long process to do. It's going to be,
40 weeks.
yeah, it's something like
Yeah.
that. It's a huge
So
amount of time,
there's, you could buy a la carte from them, option A, B, and C, and even still, it's a pretty long time frame. So I think at that point, we'll just go and have a separate meeting on that with
Yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
and then we can come back with a recommendation. And it just has a lot to do with how they're archiving the meetings and the extensiveness to move that over, so.
Is there anything that Schumacher Meats is doing that can be leveraged to like align the design, or
Yeah, actually, there can be.
aren't they indexing everything?
Say that again?
Aren't they organizing, they're running through everything on the site, right? To figure out what to pull out?
Well, what you do is you actually redirect to the site. So, because if you pull and draw, then you're going to have a very expensive website standalone. So instead, you'll have them in PDFs, so they don't take any memory or anything, and then you just direct it in. So it's seamless to us. So that was a lot of the conversation about it, quite honestly. So, based on the whole, because the LDC, only because I was familiar with working on that one, the price is similar in suit, and Civil Plus actually did that one, which is what Tom Schumacher, he's coming in at the same thing, and we have a lot more control with him because of the design and everything based on him building it. So, and there is another platform that he can plug into as well if we so choose, but it'll look, I think we'll be pleased with the design because I saw the first format of it, as you all did.
And as he's designing that, is he going to look at our existing website?
Yes, well, that's kind of there's two parts to that. Yes, he's going to look at it, but then we also have to see, do we want that look? Not to say that we don't, but we haven't updated our website for 7 or 8 years. So just the crispness of it's going to change. I think really what we can do is we can make a proposal on like a palette that we like. And then from that, show you the interface of what it would look like, because it just operates differently, and it bleeds out and everything. So once we get that, I did look at what Tom had proposed, and it's going to have a very nice, clean feel. I even saw the logo on it, and it will be complimentary.
And who's going to update Sleepy Hollow connected?
That's a great question. That is a great question. Because it's it's behind the scenes, it's very easy to update. Would Bill
Yeah,
be the one?
we're looking to train as many department heads and people to help.
Okay, because I know like the LDC one isn't updated very often.
Yeah.
I-
And Bill, between Bill and the department heads that do it, and Paula does a lot of it, and we'll be able to keep the content up to date.
So just kind of thinking, and that's a really good point. I mean, the website is the domain, you know, and even if there's a secondary platform that has the information, that information is also on the website. You never want to compromise
On the
content.
village website.
Yes, that's my proposal, right, because that's where people know to go. It's a
Yes.
government site. So what you're doing is you're organizing a platform for people to say, I want to know about what the connections are, it's really kind of branding your thing, like the LDC has a purpose and a mission. So what that purpose and mission is, then that information is formulated in such a way that it's easily to get to in a different way. And it's giving more of the how and why, and that's the story. So the Sleepy Hollow Connected actually originated as the comp plan, and so it's evolving from that as the strategies. So thinking about it in that way. This is the first, I don't know, I mean, there's 13, we identified many different strategies within the comprehensive plan, so this could be covering off, let's say, 3 or 4 of them, for example. So then it's going to evolve again. So that's why this site is being built in such a way that it could continue to evolve. And that's part of the site. It's going to speak to the evolution of the comp plan to execution.
So does Sleepy Hollow Connected actually pull from different pages of the?
Exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
So then when we do
And-
updates, it will be to the village site.
It
That
will,
then get pulled into Sleepy Hollow Connected.
yes. So you can get to Sleepy Hollow by itself,
Okay.
or you can also get it to it through the website. Like they'll connect the two.
So this
Yes.
is also a preliminary update of the village website in a way?
I think so.
Okay.
I think what it's going to do is it's going to, absolutely.
Force us to review the content, understand what's important, refresh and update.
Yes, it really is, because a lot of what's going in the connection is, for example, and that's a great point. You look at the website, right, and you see the quick links. Well, you continue to add to quick links, it's no longer quick. You have 15 of them, so now we have to say, okay, what's relevant? How is that important? So the biggest asset too, on top of it, is having Bill, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because he's really the becoming the point contact person for us in helping. So I think that's a big asset with that. And it's very easy to navigate as well. So
Sure.
that would be my update, if anybody have any other questions, but I would put it on there. And if I could, Anthony, then ask, maybe we have a meeting with Bill and everybody on the communications, because we've kind of been doing our own things, but that would be a good.
And for
Good place to
those-
start.
And for those that don't read English or something, they want to go, is there any way that they can navigate the system?
That's another good question. I know with the website, we have the translator, so everything gets translated. When it's in a PDF, it can't, because it can't drive into that. However, we did speak with Bill, and he said that there might be, as we look at things, we can have certain things translated. He said he would help with us. I'd like to, that's a good question for Tom, to make sure that there's a translator on there. I think it's just a functionality that just has to be considered. So I'll bring that up, thank you. I know it's been talked about though, just so you know.
Thank you. I did catch up with Bill yesterday, I believe.
Okay,
And he gave me some insights about, we have a new version of our website that can be used and updated. I think the cost is right around $40,000 with migration. It'll bring us to crisper is a nice way of putting it. Our site is a little, from someone in the industry, I would say dated.
yeah,
There are just things we can do to make it look a little nicer. The new version also adds a lot of functionality to reduce some of our ongoing costs. Because we'll be able to archive our documents inside the website. They're easier to find. A couple of, there's maybe Irvington, I think, had the newer version. You can see it, it looks a lot more modern, there's a lot more design elements, but also it's easier to navigate, more compliant with some other things. And then also you mentioned, Renee, as we roll into newsletter, it's actually something you might want to talk about was translation. So maybe that's a good bleed over into, if we find someone for translation of the newsletter, maybe we can bring in and translate either a specific section, so you don't have to rely on that programmatic translation, which we know is a little substandard at time for key areas, but also allow for certain documents that are the most important to be translated over time. I know there's a lot of them, but I think it'd be a very good thing to be inclusive of the community. Maybe we can talk about the upgrade next time after you guys connect as the connected committee. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, is that one that you would feel, one of the things I might try to ask is that, I've talked to all of you, is we start asking who's going to kind of lead up on these things and who's going to follow up on it. Are you okay with taking those?
Yeah, on the news.
I was wondering with the website itself and the upgrade.
Yeah, no, because they are very much related, and I've been supporting that and spearheading it, so I'll continue to do that, absolutely.
Okay, and then the idea was planning to put that back on the agenda for
Yes.
next week?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Appreciate it, everyone.
All right, that brings us into the newsletter. I know, Lauren, you and I were talking about it. Do you want to start, or?
Sure, yeah, no, I think, I just felt that there was an opportunity to add a little bit of routine to the news updates. I know that there are occasional email blasts that go out with a lot of great information, but potentially saying this is gonna happen every 2 weeks or however often we want, and that all department heads have to submit updates by this date, and then it just goes out regularly instead of kind of ad hoc.
And
I think it's already being done, it's just standardizing.
100%, I agree with that one. I think I was thinking about, I looked at Terrytown, I looked at a couple others do a little more weekly. My head is kind of leaning towards monthly. Just as the beginning, we find maybe we have enough content for more than that, great. Renee had a good idea for some, a limited amount of printing for accessibility, especially in some of the parts of the inner village or in other areas of town that we find that, so there's a technology gap. But I think it'd be a great opportunity to give, what Anthony just ran us through, top 5 things that are big projects, expected completion times, DPW items that people are worried about, what we're doing, what our focus is. I was telling someone the other day, maybe this is budget month, right? Here's what we're looking at. Here are the obstacles we're working through. So they don't have to worry about sitting here and listening to us talk. They can read through it quickly, and if they get interested, we'd love them to participate. So I've asked Bill that to see if he has time for it. When I talked to him, he said he could definitely do that. They're all agree that's a good use of his time. I think it'd be a wonderful addition. Also, it would help us organize across Facebook, into the website, ensure what should go where, and what maybe as we start to get into redesigning, understand what content's important. It's a resource we already have and put into our budget, so it's no incremental cost. It's just how we wish to reallocate that.
I think the timing is also really good because, each time we've had this discussion and we all have recognized it's a need, we didn't have a communications director. So we always had a difficult hurdle to overcome. And now that we do, and he's willing and able, I think it's a good opportunity to put that out there for sure. So I think that's worth the effort. So that would be my endorsement on that for sure.
I would recommend that we try to reuse as much content as possible. So in terms of what's coming up, just reuse the agenda. In terms of what just happened, just reuse the minutes, things like that, so people don't have to create new content that's just repetitive.
Yeah, and also too, just so you know, as in terms of using content and being efficient, one of the things that I saw that Bill had just recently put together is an editorial calendar of and on there, and he goes out pretty far. So he'll put things in there as to certain updates by department already. So if he uses that to what I just was hearing about what's going out on the platforms, then he can pull from that and then pull from the minutes. It's really just reorganizing. It's, once again, it's, what do they say? It takes 5 times, say it again, say it one more time. And then you still have to say it. So I think it's a good format. So I just wanted to let everybody know he's got a good work arrangement for that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good one to be able to take as much as you can. Also, on that same point, we were discussing maybe we should think about expanding our social media presence a little bit. We are currently on Facebook, but there's a large cohort that has migrated away from that, more towards the beginner of Instagram. I'm not going to venture towards TikTok yet. There's maybe a little bit of other things there, but you know, I'm not really sure if we need a resolution for that, but I think we'd want at least agreement from the village. The good thing with that is it's taking just some of the photos. It's less of new content. It's more of just sharing visually what we're doing, sharing visually what we care about. And it goes from Facebook, which is words and images, to really images with a few words, right? Seems to be a big hit most of the time when we've done it in other smaller areas.
So that would require a moderator, I assume, or, you know, somebody to approve content, approve pictures, approve written
Exactly.
comments.
Yeah, I think you're able to disable the comments. We'd generally just want to do that. And then just more take it as that, here's what we're doing. But yes, I think that'd be falling under Bill's thing. So if
Yeah.
he's doing
Perfect, yeah.
you got an image for the newsletter, pop it up on this. Maybe there's more there that you're taking from. So it's
Well,
just.
they can
as he's working through it.
simultaneously post
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
Yes, and they are owned by the same company, so it just goes into
Yeah.
2 places. Very
Yeah.
easy to manage, one moderator, it's already kind of set up.
Yeah.
And doesn't Bill already have that functionality set up with Paula? So they have a system of posting.
Yes, for Facebook, but they haven't gone into any other platforms.
Yeah, but I think like Denise was saying, I mean, it's easy enough to post on both.
Yeah, you can do it, and there's definitely 2 different audiences.
Yeah,
A little bit younger.
And people who don't have as much time to read through
Yep.
Facebook
Yeah.
posts, you know what I mean? They get a quick snapshot of what's happening.
Yep, and you hit the reels a little bit. We could do a little bit of just trying to get people to realize the good we're doing. Maybe it's as simple as I loved, it came to mind when I saw Anthony's presentation. Hey, the sidewalks on Clinton Street. Hey, the bollards coming up. Those are just good things for us to throw in and make sure that people know. Do we need a resolution to open an Instagram page? Just our direction? If we do, we'll direct Bill appropriate if everyone's on the same page. Any other thoughts on newsletter, Instagram, cadence, stuff like that? Ownership, I'm interested in helping with this one, if anyone else wants to help too. I know, Lauren, I know you seem very interested, but don't want to volunteer you. I know.
Yeah, I mean, the newsletter, I think the monthly sounds good, and
Yeah.
happy to work with Bill on any setup.
and then Laura and I can work with you too if we're having some internal meetings with Bill on the website. Then
Yeah.
I'll cross with you as Anthony will bring you up to date, and vice versa.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
All right, if we're good, Jared had brought up some questions on the Beekman Avenue. This actually was, I broadened it a little bit admittedly. His initial question was temporary, the insertion of stop signs on Beekman Avenue at the Clinton Street, I believe, intersection. That's as much as I'm aware of that one now.
And as he said, because we're putting a crosswalk there, or have we done so already?
No.
We're planning to. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
You know,
I know there's a
Yeah.
bus stop there as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because there is no crosswalk, it's too far away from one
Right.
to another, so it isn't needed. People don't have to come all the way up to Preston Church and just to cross this, you need a place to cross the street and then so.
So we're adding bump out paint and crosswalks, and so we need the stop signs. But we need a public hearing, right? Because that's code?
Yeah.
Okay, so can we do that next week for the stop signs there?
To the public.
if that's okay with everybody.
One of those things I would like to move to start on when we get into road things, and this is a question, is there's no obligation, but there is a bit of a expectation that we have someone in charge of, are we setting the right, stop sign, is the stop sign clearly visible? I'm not saying as far as a traffic study, I think that goes a little further, but almost maybe a traffic engineer to review what we're doing, ensure that it is legal and complies with DOT requirements. I'm not sure how we've done that in the past. Anthony or anyone?
In some cases, we've hired a traffic engineer to help us, and other times we just went for it. But I agree with the mayor that it's a good idea, especially because the board's thinking of all kinds of changes, and it might be a good idea to just get a traffic engineer to say, yes, this is a good idea, or, you have to look at this further. It's just, I think that's a prudent thing to do versus just stick stop signs everywhere.
Yeah.
But I get it, Clinton, that's kind of an obvious one, but there's other roads that are impacted. So, because we're doing so much with the Cortland Plaza, some other stop signs proposed on Beekman, other areas in the area, it might be wise to get an engineer.
Did we use somebody for the Cortland design? That was a
We
traffic
did
engineer?
not.
Okay. I thought somebody did the curb.
We hired an engineer to design the curb,
Radius.
the radius only.
Okay,
I think
they're not
this is-
traffic engineer though?
No, this is more about traffic flow and where certain signs should be and where they are visible. The one coming eastbound is hard to see, is that in the right, that kind of stuff to make sure the engineers.
Do we have somebody for that?
There's a few out there, so we would have to,
Do an RFP, maybe create a retainer with the chosen provider, keep it as a à la carte, but as we have things that, one of the things I like about it is it creates a third party. I don't want to create huge amounts of layers of approvals for things that are obvious, but I also want to make sure that we're planning for it as we go into other things. That's just my personal opinion. I'd love to hear the discussion on it.
I think it makes a lot of sense, Martin, because I've heard comments, and I think probably all of us have, about traffic on Beekman in particular, but also coming in and out of Edge on Hudson, and concerns about what's going to happen with traffic. So I would use this in conjunction with the website, in conjunction with the connected website and the newsletter, in terms of blasting it out there like, hey, we're listening to you about your traffic concerns, and we're doing this study, and here's what we found, and here's what we think is gonna happen in the future,
And I think it's kind of a two-phase, right? We bring in the engineer as try to get the things quicker, right? We could also use that same engineer for a larger traffic study and discuss the cost and implications. I've heard, just where is it all going to go? And it's been a while from I asked Anthony earlier, since we've done a full study of the village with the change in edge and everything else, what will be needed? And the center village, inner village is a lot. We'll can discuss DePicer in a second, but I'm not a traffic engineer, so I kind of raised I'd like a little bit of assistance there from one friend, but happened to want to get the idea of something larger down the road as we start to know that we're going to bring more and more families in the edge, more and more traffic. How is that impacting? And ensuring that we're designing for the future of Sleepy Hollow.
Definitely. Yeah, we want to avoid any I told you so's or
Yeah, I think it's important
gotchas.
to have, have the experts do it, especially in such a high traffic and highly visible area. It's not like sticking a stop sign, in the manor somewhere where there's just a few people coming and going. But this has, it's a bigger impact, and I think it would be better if we did our due diligence.
Okay.
And I saw that you put the DePicer one-way as a component to that, and I'm in favor of being sure that we do a traffic study as it relates to that. And, just in expressing that a little bit further, I know that this was talked about a couple of years ago, this area, but it's also a bus route for the school. So if So if you change that, then where does the bus route change? I know that there was some discussion around it, and then it didn't go any further. So I feel as if in support of the traffic here, but also the comp plan talked a lot about that. And I think that that would be one of the, it would be exercising that as well. So I think it's really important to check in to see what was important there. Because you can't just, I know we did one exception, I remember on Howard Street, we changed that to a one-way.
Yeah.
But that worked really well, but we were also very mindful about what that traffic was coming from with Continental and having a relief in two ways. So I know that we did that independently, but I wouldn't always be in favor of doing that ongoing.
And normally I wouldn't be either, especially before all of us were on the board. The previous boards voted to change Old Broadway to one-way, and it ended up being a disaster, and they had to change it back.
I went the wrong way on that.
Yeah, and I really think that.
That was not good.
Yeah, it was not good, and I really think that, we don't want to get caught doing that, making a mistake like that again. It's too important, and although I'm not really in favor of changing it to one-way, but I think we should have an expert look at it, because most of us have no experience in this area, or maybe than Jared, but I think we should, again, get an expert opinion.
So it sounds like if we get a traffic engineer, then that potentially could be the person to do a bigger study down the road when we're ready. I'm just mindful of, if we want to do that painting and add that crosswalk, and we already have 60 days for a public hearing, and then we would have to make a resolution for a code change. Potentially, we could find a traffic engineer, put out an RFP, get that information within that time frame. So we would move forward simultaneously with a public hearing and a traffic engineer, and by the time we were ready to do it, we would have somebody who could consult on it.
That's a good
Otherwise, it's
idea.
gonna be 3 or 4 months, and then we can't even do the intersection that we want.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable time frame to get?
Well, it depends. If we're just doing the painting, we could do that. I don't think we need a traffic engineer.
But can we do the painting and add the crosswalks without the stop signs?
I guess it would depend where we're doing them. I mean, I know that Trustee Rodriguez has a lot of experience, and kind of trust him if we're gonna do some crosswalks, certain areas. But it really depends where.
And I think the timing question, though, is can we get an RFP out for a traffic engineer and look at different options within 60 to 90 days? So we could both go out to RFP for a consultant on traffic and issue a public comment for the stop signs, so that in 60 days, we would be able to make a decision as opposed to then start the public hearing process.
Yeah, do them in parallels.
Parallel, yes.
Yeah, and I think from what I've asked, and I've seen, I've asked a few people, it seems like the stop signs are relatively straightforward, as Anthony said, but, what we would do is say, hey, this is our plan, this is what we're gonna do, exactly where we put them, how we implement that, be dependent on, if we still, once we get to the public hearing, we still have time to make the final resolution. So if we decide based on the feedback from the traffic engineer, we can adjust that. If he, says, yep, this is a good job, place them here, we can still move forward. So it gives us options, but also it's a great idea, it moves quicker.
And it'd be a good first project for that traffic engineer.
Exactly, and then he or they can figure that out.
Yeah.
So, I'm not as close to the project on timing that Trustee Rodriguez was working on. Is it following his timeline still?
I believe that was the next
Yeah.
intersection to be
That's-
painted.
Yeah.
Do we have a timeline? Do you know if we have a timeline on when that's gonna be done?
And nothing about the stop sign would change what we're doing with the painting, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so
I
then.
think they're-
The idea was
they're
just like, just to.
Because I would hate, he's not here too, so I don't want to, I don't.
The stop sign is what is needed to make
To operate
to operate it better,
effectively.
right? Because we're adding bump outs and putting in a crosswalk where none exists. So if you
Right.
don't have a stop sign, you've got a crosswalk without a stop sign. Which is-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think just as what I'm hearing is just being prudent to have that as they're giving us the scope of where everything's gonna be. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like for him to weigh in, you know, if, just, you know, I'm comfortable with it, in feeling how I think that it's what he would be looking to do, and it's not compromising the project without a view that I'm not saying.
No, I
But-
think the stop sign is part of that project.
I do understand
Yeah,
that, but I didn't know if it would, just like to make sure that he's recognizing that that's the way we're moving forward.
Yeah.
So, okay, good.
All right, we'll chat with Anthony about the process of the RFP and figure out what the next steps are. If we have to go on to the meeting, we'll put it on, we'll take the appropriate steps in between. Okay. Last one on the agenda is, actually I have to add one, but ongoing Zoom utilization for public participation. Back to just doing more. Sorry, I added this one in. I know we used Zoom a while back for, during COVID. I believe a couple trustees would dial in at times. There's my age. With video conference in, be able to participate. I like the idea of being able to have a panelist, meaning if a trustee is out or for a work session, if someone's traveling, like Jared is here, he could have participated via Zoom. Also, people could stay at home, participate in, listen, and during a work session, more of a board meeting, they could, comment during that time. I know there's been some concerns about setting it up. I had some discussions with our audiovisual person earlier. I might be able to be of assistance in being able to do that before meetings. I think the hard part we'd have to figure out is someone to manage the audience during the meeting. That's the big piece. I think maybe we might be able to find a volunteer, was my first thought would be. Maybe an intern for some community service hours in high school was an idea I had. I know they always have to pick up a bunch of those up. Just trying to think a little outside the box to be able to make our lives a little easier and also have someone who enjoys it be able to participate in government. But from a higher level, just what do you guys think of Zoom for participation?
Well, to be honest, I'm not certain, but in terms of managing the audience, you mean in terms of if they have a question, if they've typed a comment, things like that? I mean, personally, I would shut that all off. If they have a question, they can come, or they can send us an email. We have lots of avenues already. I having done these a lot over the last, 15 years, you can have two dial-ins, so the trustees and the mayor can dial in and be able to talk and type, and the other participants could have all of that shut off and they just watch. That would be my perspective if we go ahead with it.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the remote participation for the board and mayor. I think it would be challenging to have public comment via Zoom. I think we could try it, but I think for Tom's consideration, it adds a level of complication that we'd have to have somebody very capable of managing.
I agree with the texting. I think generally for chat would be something to disable. My personal thought on this was someone could come up on their camera, participate via the phone, the video conference there, have a public comment during the public comment period, be managed as such. To me, it's just a virtual representation of one of our residents, so they don't have to leave the home or they're unable to leave their home, is where I'm seeing it. So I agree with your piece on the commenting, Tom. I'm not trying to create that. I am just trying to give another alternative way for people to be able to express their opinion while wearing sweatpants.
What if we piloted it as like one public comment period a month or something?
I'm open to piloting anything. I understand, it's open to pilot. I'd love to get it out there as much as we can. If it works, if it's a utter disaster, I'll be the first one to say, hey, all right, that didn't work. Let's peel it off and go back to the way we did it. I'm open to that.
Yeah, I will do a panel, but I will see also who participates. and see who was in there that participate, you know. And that will give us an idea of like, okay, is this entire Sleepy Hollow participating in this, or just certain people participating in this?
So the level of participation
Yes.
is what you're looking at.
It's just like-
You know, it's interesting, we were just talking about who's streaming on YouTube,
Yeah.
right? So I'm trying to, in my mind, figure out, all right, what's the difference of viewing it through the stream and then also the Zoom? Like, what better?
There's a 9-second delay on YouTube, so there's no two-way communication.
Okay, so hot off the press is that there is a delay, and I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking in terms of just being able to see it from your home and live, but not participating. So I guess it's really the element, and I like what Renee is saying, it's like, what's the level of participation? And that could be maybe just, you know, I'd have to think about it as well. You know, the only way I think you could even consider it from participation is, you know, there's a 3-minute period, add a public comment, you know, and managing it. I don't know if I would be comfortable with a volunteer person per se, because they really have to manage the queue as to what would come up. Not volunteer, but just someone with a little bit more experience to manage that, that's all. I'm open to discuss it more. I just have to see what if you get you know, what's the exposure level as we're looking at more opportunities for exposure.
And that's a good point about the viewing live stream versus, because if there are a low number of people who would be viewing and then commenting, it would be easy to manage. But if it's a hot topic and we have 20 or 30 people that are all there who want their 3 minutes, and you gotta figure out who's gonna talk and cut them off and.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, I mean, I think it was just brought up before, I mean, anybody, you know, once you see a meeting, anybody can write in an email and tell their position, and maybe we just have to be more expressive about the way in which we do things, that we can, you know, if we're using a newsletter, if we're sending out more, we're being more diligent in some of those things and having more of a cadence around it, we say just that, you know. Here, you can view it here, you know, this is a way in which you can talk to us, and see if we can increase the participation with the tools that we already have. That would be my recommendation as well. Since we're putting a lot more resources against those things anyways, it just seems like yet another layer. Maybe we can just, my recommendation is probably to revisit it after we get some of these other things, you know, up and running with newsletters and.
Well, there should be a standing, tell us what you think link in the newsletter, and they click on it and
Yeah.
it sends us an email.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
That's a great idea.
Also, Anthony or Sarah, maybe you guys know, but with the public meetings law, I believe it was partly adjusted during COVID, but I believe that we would have to notice if any of us are going to be on Zoom,
Yes.
right? And people would,
Yeah.
in theory, we're not
It's-
supposed to
it's
be
by phone.
alone.
By
You
phone.
would actually
by
have to,
telephone.
you'd have an extraordinary circumstance, and I think we'd actually have to pass an adjustment to our existing laws
Mhm.
to allow that to occur.
Mhm.
It does not currently, we discussed it yesterday, I think, with council, just as part of discussions. That would, I think, have to be an alteration at the main village.
But you can call in, and you have to, I think you even have to say where your
Yes,
location is.
there are a few ways to handle it. You can also state your location, it has to be a public place, and do a few things that way.
Well, I just want to add, I'm really not a proponent of Zoom, I don't like it, and I am a proponent of in-person, and after COVID, you know, we fought like a while to get people to come back, and the meetings run much better in person, and I personally think it's people's responsibility. If something's that important to them, they've got to show up and bring it here, or at the very least email us. We've tried Zoom after, and it was very complicated for Anthony and for anyone else who was trying to coordinate it, and it just really didn't work. I really think if it was going to work, you'd need to hire somebody. I don't know if a volunteer would cut it. But I'm a big proponent of in-person meetings, and that's just my way I feel about it.
I respect that. I think if you're okay with it, I'll table it, obviously, but I'm gonna take a little bit of time to see if I can put together a better plan for it. I'm, as you know, a big proponent of coming to where people are. I respect your position, I understand it. I just respectfully have a different opinion. So I will take the ownership for it and see if I can come up with a plan that's a little more compelling and bring it back to you.
If, I have one other item. There was something we talked about maybe 2 months ago, was perhaps doing public meetings in other places.
Yes, I was
That may be another way to address, bringing in more interest.
Yes, I agree with that as well. I think that's a very good idea.
I'm not sure how that would work for Mike back there and, the rest, but I'm sure we can figure it out.
You mean actually televised?
Yeah, or if we're, yeah, exactly.
Because we've done those in the past when we've had different meetings, but we just didn't
I
televise
don't
them.
think they were televised.
No, they weren't, but there was a lot of, we
But
went to the
it was a good
churches, we
idea.
went to
Church, Kendall, we did one, we could do one down at
the
Edge.
senior center.
Yeah.
As long as we provide a public notice and we tell them where it'll be and what time, and it's a publicly available venue, we can meet.
Perfect.
Perfect. I do have one more before I ask if you asked anything I missed. I was checking through, I don't believe we passed a law for exceeding the tax cap growth this year. I'm not sure if we have to. It's generally just an order of procedure to do so, to make sure that in case something happens, we are in compliance with the law. Want to make sure, one, that I'm correct, we have not done that, but also, I believe if it has to be noticed, it has to age and then be passed before, and to Albany before May 1st, if my research is correct.
We usually do it right before we adopt the budget. We do it on the same evening, and we do it with the public hearing.
Yeah.
So that both items should have been noticed with the public hearing.
Okay.
Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
The tax cap, when
Yes.
we override the tax cap, we do it every year.
Mm-hmm.
So the state sets a maximum growth target for your taxes.
Mhm.
It's set on the growth factor, I believe it's around 2% this year.
Okay, that's
I
what
mean,
I want
sorry,
to know. What is it this year?
I think it's growth for inflation, and then we have a growth target as well. Ours is close to 5, if I remember correctly, percent. I don't remember.
No, the state gives us, there's two growth factors. One was, I think, 2.2, and the other one was 1.8.
Okay, it's in my email.
Yeah, there are two numbers that are given to us by the state,
Do we
and there's a
have that?
calculation that we do when we have the correct levy. So we just have an estimated levy right now,
Yes.
but once we finalize the numbers, then we will have that levy.
Okay.
They basically just wanted to make sure that everyone didn't go over, they wanted to come in and say 2% is the number, 1.8 is the number, you shouldn't go over this number.
Okay.
And we always believed that we did that in-house, and you would override that number, and you decided what the tax rate would be.
Okay.
If you didn't do that, and 2 years later, they changed the formula, or we calculated the formula incorrectly, they could come back and penalize us, and there would be a penalty, a fiscal penalty.
Okay.
So we always wanted to override this tax cap, so even, because the state doesn't even know what the formula is sometimes, they can come back and penalize. We didn't want to do that. So regardless whether or not we follow their number or not, we wanted to override the tax cap.
Okay.
So that's what we have done since the tax cap has been enabled. I think 1 year, we ended up being under the tax cap and we had to repeal it. But since they put the tax cap in place, the board has always overridden it.
So our next step to that, we already have a plan for that, sorry.
Right now, you haven't decided anything yet because we really haven't decided what the tax levy is.
So it's actually a local law, so you have to do,
Yes.
you'd have to set a public hearing for the 18th.
On the 18th. Okay.
And probably, either open it for comments and then close it, or maybe you can do
I
it.
thought it was part of this public hearing. Okay.
Override the tax cap.
Which public?
Yeah.
The one you
budget.
just
Yeah,
said?
usually it's with the budget.
But I didn't hear, there was nothing that
So,
was said.
just
Okay,
to
so we need to do
clarify,
that.
we have,
That's why I was,
the boards have passed to override it, but we didn't always override it. In some cases, we had
sure.
below 0%
Right.
tax
Right.
increase. It's just a safeguard that the philosophy of the board over the years years has been to just override it just in case. But you have to set a public hearing, we need 2 weeks to notice it, and it would be,
So does the public.
it would give us enough time if the board wants to do it on the 18th, that's 2
Okay.
weeks.
Yeah, we need to do it. Usually we do it on the same public hearing as the budget, so if we didn't do that, we need to
No.
do that right away, yeah. And it needs to, usually we adopt it with the budget, the evening, and we do it right before the budget adoption.
Yes.
So, yeah, we need to,
If you don't override it, you don't have the flexibility to keep the tax above 2%. You'd have to stay below 2% regardless.
right,
That makes sense.
Okay, so we need to set a public notice, in our next board meeting,
Yes.
hearing, and adjust it.
Or just make a motion to set a public hearing on the tax cap now. and
No, I
we
think
go
we
into-
should do it now.
Yeah.
We have 2
Yeah,
weeks
we
to
could,
do
And
it.
then go into special session and do that.
We can do that, let's finish off one, I think we're there, we have to go to executive session anyway, so I guess can I have a motion to go to a special session to discuss, a public hearing for the changing of the tax cap, or writing a local law for the tax cap.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion?
Yeah, well, I have a quick question. Anthony, you mentioned for the 18th, it could also, so we're with the intention of it carrying through to the 25th, or?
It's up to the board to decide. You could keep it the 18th, you could keep it open to the 25th if you want, but then you'd have to pass it that day, that
Right.
night.
'Cause the 18th would be another work session, right?
yes, if we.
Which we can do.
Yeah.
I mean, we can, because we just had that in the organization.
Mhm. I mean, I'm fine with the 18th, but, and I'm just saying, I think it gives us that extra week if we wanted to. But these both need to be passed by the end of the month.
Right,
Yes.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries. Motion to adjourn the special session.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those opposed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. All right. Back to the last of our work session. I believe Mr. McCarthy brought up to my attention that there's going to be a large amount of concrete coming down Beekman Avenue tomorrow. So expect a lot of trucks on Beekman Avenue pretty much all day. Sean, is that right?
Yes, all day.
All right. So plan accordingly. Don't be, I think they're starting on the H block, is that it?
H block.
So part at the very end of the traffic circle at the bottom of Beacon Avenue. I think it's a large amount of concrete for the first floor, so it'll be interesting to see. It'll be working pretty much all day. All right, I guess I'm gonna ask for a motion to go into executive session, to discuss personnel matters, if that's, agreeable to the board.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I think this will complete our, business for the evening. I don't believe we'll plan to go back once we finish this come and adjourn, so thank you for attending. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? And we'll enter executive session. Thank you, everyone.